Okay, we're going to take a look now at the substitution method for solving simultaneous equations. So I'm going to do 3 examples in this video, working from easier, kind of medium, and then a harder one. The previous video looked at using the elimination method. What you'll find, how do I spot when I have to use substitution? And pretty much if you've got 2 equations and one of them has a squared or anything like that, an x squared or a y squared in the equation, you have to use the substitution method. If you try to use the elimination, you'll quickly discover it won't work out for you. Now, in this first example that I'm going to do here, you can solve this one by the elimination method, is absolutely fine, but I'm just going to show how you do it by substitution. So, what we have here is we've got 2 equations. I'm going to number them 1 and 2. So I'll put a little 1 and 2, so you know which one I'm talking about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange one of the equations to get a variable on its own. So that means get a letter on its own. So it's obviously easier to rearrange the second equation because it's just an x and a y. So what I'll do is I'll say rearrange 2 for, and you can say x or y here. I'm going to decide to do it for y, because why not, right? You could do it for x, absolutely no problem. So I take my second equation, and I'm just going to rearrange it. So I've got x plus y equals 6. And I'm trying to get y alone. So in order to do that, I'd have to take x off the left-hand side and do it for both. So I end up getting y equals 6 minus x. And that's my kind of first part. I'm always getting a variable, whether it's x or y, on its own. Okay, now that I've done that, what I need to do is I'm going to sub, so hence why it's called substitution method, I'm going to sub y into the other equation. So if I rearrange the second equation, I have to sub into the first equation. So I'm going to say sub y into equation 1. So I write equation 1. So that's 3x minus 2y equals 8. And I'm going to replace the y with 6 minus x. So 3x minus 2, and replace the letter y with what we just found here, 6 minus x. Now we're going to get down and solve this equation. This one will just give us one answer. Just be careful with your multiplication. Minus 2 by 6 is minus 12. Minus 2 by minus x is plus 2x equals 8. 3x and 2x is 5x, so I get 5x minus 12 equals 8. And slide that down a bit. I'm going to get add 12 to both sides. So I get 5x equals 20. So x is 4, dividing both sides by 5. Great. I now have my x value, so I'm going to sub that in to either equation to get my y. So, as before, when we did the elimination method, I'm going to pick an equation. I'm going to say sub x into equation, I'll do equation 1, right? Sub x into 1. So, take equation 1, 3x minus 2y equals 8, and just replace the x with 4, which we just found. So 3 by 4 minus 2y equals 8. 3 by 4 is 12, minus 2y equals 8. I'm going to subtract 12 off both sides because I'm trying to get y alone. And I get minus 2y equals 8 minus 12 is minus 4. I'm going to divide both sides by minus 2. And I get y is minus 4 over minus 2, which is 2. So I found my x and my y here, so I am done. But just for good habit, I'm going to check both in the other equation. So if I subbed it into 1, I'll check them both in equation 2. This is just to cover yourself. So x plus y equals 6. 4 for x plus 2, does that equal 6? Hey presto, it certainly does. So we have the right answers. Okay. So what's the difference between substitution and elimination? Substitution, you try to get one of them on their own. So get a letter on its own. So I got y here. You can get x on its own. It's fine as well. And then substitute that into the other equation. So I rearranged equation 2 and I subbed it into equation 1. And then I got one variable, and then I did the same as I did previously. I sub it into other equations. Okay, let's look at a slightly harder example, and one that you would really could only use substitution method for. So this one here. x squared plus y squared equals 10, x minus y equals 2. So I've got two equations. I'll call them 1 and 2 again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange one of the equations to get a variable on its own. So we always look for the easier one, the second one. So I'm going to say rearrange 2, 4, and I'm going to do it for x this time. X is kind of easier to rearrange for here because it's just got a 1 in front, which they both do. But if I get rid of the y here, I have a positive x. If I get rid of the x, I would have a negative y. I'd have to change the signs. So always try to just get the positive one, I think, on its own is a bit easier. So we've got x minus y equals 2. And to get rid of minus y, I would add y to both sides. So the y's cancel on the left, and I get x equals 2 plus y, or y plus 2, it's all the same. So I've now got x alone. Delighted. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look and say, right, let's fix my page there. I'm going to take a look and say, okay, let's sub x into the other equation. So I'm going to sub it into equation 1. So I write equation 1. X squared plus y squared equals 10. So this is equation 1, up here was equation 2. Now I'm going to replace x with 2 plus y, but just be really careful here. It's 2 plus y bracket squared plus y squared equals 10. And now comes probably the biggest part of this, which is expanding brackets and multiplying this out. So I'll take my time, and the most important step where I see mistakes happen with students is make 2 brackets for yourself. 2 plus y by 2 plus y. So I've made 2 brackets because something squared means multiplied by itself. And now we're going to expand these 2 brackets. Now you can do this a variety of methods, but I'm going to do 2 by this bracket and plus y by this bracket. And then I add in the rest of my equation, which hasn't changed. I clean it up. 2 by 2 is 4, 2 by y is 2y, y by 2 is 2y, y by y is y squared plus y squared equals 10. I'm going to move up to this side of the page, but I'll just see what things add together. So I have y's, y squareds, excuse me. I have y's, and I have a number here and a number over here. I'll just do this left-hand side first, though. So on the left-hand side, it's going to clean up to become, let's add the y's. So I've got 2y squared. I've got 4y's, so plus 4y, and I've got 4 equals to 10. So you might notice I've rearranged it where I've written the y squared first, followed by the y, followed by the constant. I recommend doing it this way because you'll see it get to where we want to go to next. So I'm just going to get everything on the left-hand side, and you'll see why in a moment. I'm going to take 10 off the right. If I take 10 off the right, I have to take 10 off the left. So I finally get 2y squared plus 4y minus 6 equals 0. And now what you'll see is we have a quadratic. Okay, we have a quadratic and we have to solve it. Now there are 2 methods you can use to solve quadratics. One method is factorising and one method is using the minus b formula. My advice is if you struggle with factorising to always just use the minus b. Okay, I'm going to show this example with a minus b. And I'll show in a minute then it done again with factorising from this point. So using the minus b formula, what we need to do is we need to tell the examiner what our a, our b, and our c is of the equation. And I always write the equation. So I'm going to say it's minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is my generic quadratic formula equation. So I have to identify my a, b, and c. My a is always the number in front of my y squared. My b is always the number in front of the y, or the x if you're doing it with x's. And c is always the constant on its own. So my a here is 2, my b is 4, and my c is minus 6. And be careful with that sign. Now, at this point, what I would do is I would show it filled in. So I'm going to say it's minus b minus bracket 4 plus or minus square root of 4 squared minus 4 by 2 by minus 6 all over 2 by 2. So I've replaced the b's, the a's, and c's. I would show this to an examiner if I was doing an exam, and then what I do is I just plug it in my calculator. In my calculator, I will plug it in twice. One time, I will do it where I use a plus here at this point, and the other time I'll do it again, but I'll change that plus to a minus, giving me two answers. So I'm going to plug this into my calculator now and see what I get. Y squared plus 2. So here it is me plugging it in the calculator to show it. So we're going to get our calculator, we say minus bracket 4 plus square root bracket 4 squared minus 4a, which my a here is 2, and my c is negative 6. Now, instead of using this minus button on the calculator, I would use the little mini minus here to say negative 6. Some calculators it gives an error, some it doesn't. So you know what? If you're saying a negative number, I always just use this small negative sign. So I plug this into my calculator and I press equals, and I get y is 1. So I go y is 1. I do it again. Now you can just press the back button on a lot of calculators, and I'm just going to change this plus here just before the square root. I'm going to change that to a minus. So now it's a minus. I use the big minus down here, and I press equals, and I get y is minus 3. So I have my two answers for x and for y, or sorry, for y here. I've got y is 1 and y is minus 3. Okay. Now, how do I find my x answers? Well, what I do here is I'm going to have to do this twice. So I'm going to draw just a nice line down the page for myself there, line down here. I'm going to go, and I find it easier to sub it into the equation you made. So x equals 2 plus y. So I'm just going to sub this in, sub into 2, sub into 2. So we're going to say x plus y, or sorry, x equals 2 plus y, x equals 2 plus 1, x is 3. So my answer for this one is 3, 1. 3 for the x, 1 for the y. Here I did the same again, x equals 2 plus y, but I'm going to put in this y value. So I'm going to say x equals 2 minus 3, x equals to negative 1. So my answer on this side is negative 1 minus 3. Okay, what you'll find when you do a simultaneous equation where you've got squares, so just going back to the question, when you've got x squared and y squared, what you'll tend to find is you quite often get two answers. Now, I'm going to say briefly why this is, and you can just take a moment just so you can understand what's happening. So in this question that we had, x squared plus y squared equals 10. This is actually the equation for a circle. So anytime you see an x squared and y squared, we're talking about circles or ellipses. That's like flattened circles. So in this case, what we have is we have some sort of circle. Okay. And then our other equation, x minus y equals 2, is referring to a line. Okay, so this guy is a circle, and this guy's a line. So what we have here is we just have a line going through a circle. I'm just sketching it. This is obviously not what it probably looks like. But a line through a circle, you'll notice it actually cuts it twice. So there could be two answers. Anytime you do an x squared and y squared, you could potentially get two answers. Now, while I'm here as well, you could also get one answer. So we draw it again, and the line might touch it at just one point. Not perfectly drawn, but you get the idea. And this would mean there's only one answer. And what we call this would be a tangent to the circle. And that means it touches it at one point. So if the examiner said prove the line is a tangent, you could find the intersect and just show it happens once. And then finally, the last option is that there's no solution. That's where you've got a circle and they never meet and you won't be able to solve them. So if you can't solve it, this would be no solution. The line and the circle never meet. Okay. Generally, what I'll say is expect two answers, but sometimes you'll just get one, and that's no problem either. Okay, I also said I'd show you this one done by factorising, so if you didn't use the minus b formula. So I'm just going to write my equation again. So I had 2y squared plus 4y minus 6 equal to 0. And if I want to solve this by factorising, I'm just firstly going to clean it up. So everything can be divisible by 2 here. So I get y squared plus 2y minus 3 equals 0. And then I look at the factors of minus 3. So my factor choices are I could have 1 and minus 3, or I could have minus 1 plus 3. And I say which of them add to give me 2, positive 2. So these two add together to give me minus 2, these two add together to give me positive 2. So these are the two that I want to use. So I'm going to say it's y minus 1 times y plus 3 equals 0. That means y minus 1 equals 0, or y plus 3 equals 0. So y is equal to 1, or y is equal to negative 3. So you can see here that sometimes it'll be factorizable, which is quicker, okay, than using your minus b, but there's absolutely no shame in using the minus b formula. After you've done this, obviously you go back and you do the same here. You sub 1 and minus 3 into it to get the same answers. So it really doesn't matter which one you decide to do. I suggest getting confident, making sure you can get it right with the quadratic formula, and then building on your factorization later. Okay, the third and final example here is 3x minus y equals 4 and 4x squared minus 3xy also equals 4. So we have to look at these two equations, equations 1 and 2, and decide which is easier to rearrange. Now, it's always going to be the one without a squared. So it's going to be this one, and I think it's easier to rearrange for y here. Although you can do it the other way, but it's just, why would you? It's too much work. More likely to make a mistake. So rearrange equation 1 for y. So we have 3x minus y equals to 4. I'm going to get rid of the x's on the left, so I'm going to say take 3x, and if I do it on the left, I do it on the right. So I get, and just be careful with your signs here, I get minus y equals 4 minus 3x. Now, I don't want minus y, I want positive y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by minus 1. Now, you might rearrange differently or have been shown differently. That's totally fine. I just want to have the understanding here. So this becomes a positive y, this becomes a minus 4, and this becomes a plus 3x. So I'm just going to write that the other way because it's nicer. So it's 3x minus 4. This is not the only way to rearrange, but I'm just talking through my steps so you can see. Okay, now that I have what y is, I'm going to substitute it into the second equation. So let's try substitute this into the second equation. So sub y into equation 2. So I'm going to say, write equation 2, 4x squared minus 3xy equals 4. 4x squared minus 3x, and then I replace the y with 3x minus 4 equal to 4. So I have 4x squared minus 3x by 3x is minus 9, and x by x is x squared. Minus 3x by minus 4 would be plus 12x equals 4. These two guys here can add together. The 4x and the minus 9x, no, sorry, the 4x squared and the minus 9x squared. And I'm going to subtract 4 off both sides to get a 0 on the right. So here I'll get minus 5x squared plus 12x minus 4 equals 0. And because it's not a one that I might look at straight away and be able to factorize, I'm just going to use the minus b formula. So I'm going to say x is equal to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So my a here, identify your a. It's the number in front of the x squared. So that's the minus 5. Your b is the number in front of the x. Your c is the number alone. So my a here is minus 5, my b is positive 12, my c is minus 4. And do make sure to include those signs. So I get x equals minus my b with a 12 plus or minus 12 squared minus 4 by a, which is minus 5, by c, which was minus 4. All over 2 by minus 5. Now, I'm going to take the calculator and plug these in. So you can go ahead and try this yourself first, but you can also just watch me doing it to check that you have the right technique. Always make sure you can do this in the calculator is my advice, because you'll be surprised the number of students that just struggle with this part, that you want to clean that up. So 12 squared minus 4 bracket negative 5, so I'm using this small negative sign, negative 5 bracket negative 4 for C, all over 2 bracket negative 5. And I get an answer of 2 over 5. So x is 2 over 5. I'm going to do that again, but I'm going to change my plus in my equation. Go back. Before the square root, I'm going to change that to be a minus sign. And I get x is 2. So I've got two answers here. X is 2 over 5 and x is 2. Now don't panic if you get a fraction. Okay, quite often when you're doing these questions, you'll get one answer that's a fraction and one answer that's quite nice. Okay, so you definitely don't panic. You can always check them at the end if you've got time or wish to. So now that I have x and y, the last thing I'm going to do is sub this into this equation. And I'm going to do it twice. So I'm going to say sub x into the equation. I think it was equation 1 we rearranged. And I'm going to do it again, sub into 1. So I'm just writing x into 1. And I'll write the equation here. So I had y equals, this is our rearranged one, 3x minus 4. Y equals 3x minus 4. We're going to replace this x with the 2 over 5. So I'm going to say y equals 3 bracket 2 over 5 minus 4. I'll just finish this one out in the calculator. And again, you don't have to be a champ here. Put it in the calculator. So I get 2 over 5 minus 4. I get y is minus 14 over 5. Over at this one, I'm going to say 3 bracket. My other answer I got previously was x being 2. Take away 4. So I'm going to get x be 2. I will write this down to show what I'm doing. 3 by 2 minus 4. And I say that y is 2. So my answers here are 2, 2, and 2 over 5, comma, minus 14 over 5. Always remember your x value first. Your x value, then your y value when you're writing a coordinate. Now, we're technically done. We have the two answers. But let's say you're just feeling a little bit nervous that you didn't get the right answers. Okay? You can always check. So you can say check both in equation 1 or 2. Well, actually, I checked them in both. But anyway, I'll check them both in 1 just to show what I mean. So if I go back to equation 1 here, 3x minus y equals 4. So grab your calculator and say 3 bracket, and I'm going to replace the x with 2 over 5. So 2 over 5. And I'm going to say minus the y value I got, so minus bracket minus 14 over 5, close bracket. So I'm replacing 3x minus y with the x and y values we found, okay? So doing that in my calculator, I get an answer of 4, which is exactly what I should be getting here, so that's great. If you're not sure, you can even check it again for the next one. So you say 4 bracket 2 over 5 squared, because it's 4x squared, minus 3 bracket 2 over 5. And then by the y value, so my y value here is minus 14 over 5. And if I plug that all in, I should get an answer of 4, which I did. So this answer is obviously right. And look, to be honest, this answer is most likely right if I've got the first one right. But you can do that whole thing again where you sub in the x and y's with 2 and you should get the same thing. So there is 3 examples of solving quadratics, x squared and y squareds with where you've got quadratics, but solving simultaneous equations using the substitution method. Best of luck.